Dwight's voice cut through the Easter dinner like a knife through foil. "Who's paying you? And why is it going to an account I've never seen?" He was holding her phone. Not his, hers. The one she kept face down on the counter when she was cooking. The one she always unlocked herself before handing it over if he ever needed to check directions. But she'd left it on the dining room table when she went to get more ice. And by the time she walked back in, Dwight was standing at the head of the table with her bank notification open for everyone to see. Colette stopped in the doorway. The ice bag was still in her hands. Dwight's brother Gavin shifted in his seat. His wife Sharon set down her fork. Norma, Dwight's mother, folded her hands on the tablecloth and pressed her lips together the way she always did right before something became a problem. "That's my freelance payment," Colette said. "A client paid me for a logo project." "A client?" Dwight said the word like it was a joke. "You have clients now?" "I've been doing small design jobs for a few months. It's $175. He read the amount out loud, slowly like a prosecutor laying out evidence. "Into an account with my wife's name on it and nothing else. No joint account, just hers." He looked around the table. Did everyone hear that? Gavin said nothing. Sharon was looking at her plate. Norma clicked her tongue. "You went behind my back," Dwight said. "In this family, we share everything. We are transparent with each other. I ask you every month what you need. I give you grocery money. I handle the bills. And you're out here hiding money? For what? What are you saving it for?" Colette set the ice bag down on the counter. The plastic made a dull thud in the silence. "I wasn't hiding it. I was earning it." Still talking. He held up the phone again. "An account you never told me about. A client you never mentioned. Sneaking around doing design work like you're still some college kid with a portfolio. You're a wife, Colette. You're the heart of this home. You think Robert Engel's wife goes running around taking jobs behind his back?" Colette looked at him. She had been looking at him for 11 years, and she still couldn't always tell when the line was about to be crossed. Dwight reached over and picked up her laptop from the side table. She'd brought it to show the kids some photos after dinner, and held it in one hand. "Maybe the problem is this thing. You've got too much time on your hands. Maybe this goes." Before he could say anything else, Ingrid was already standing. Colette's younger sister had been sitting at the end of the table, quietly eating since she'd arrived an hour ago. She was the kind of person who could go still for a long time and then move so fast it startled you. She crossed the room in 4 steps and put her hand on the laptop. "Put it down, Dwight." He looked at her the way he always looked at Ingrid, like she was a guest who'd stayed past her welcome. "This doesn't involve you. Your hand is on my sister's property, and you're yelling at her in front of your whole family on Easter Sunday. It involves me." Ingrid's voice didn't rise. That was always what made people listen to her. She was a nurse. She'd spent 8 years learning how to stay calm while everything around her went wrong. "Put it down." He set it down, not because he wanted to, because 14 eyes were on him and Norma had just touched his arm. Colette stood in the middle of the kitchen and didn't move. The humiliation wasn't in his voice or even in the words. It was in the way Gavin looked at his plate, like he'd suddenly found something very interesting there. It was in the way Norma patted Dwight's arm, like he was the one who needed comfort. It was in the way Sharon glanced at Colette, with something that might have been sympathy, and then looked away before it could become anything real. It was the same look she'd been getting for 11 years. Ingrid had texted her the night before. "Coming tomorrow. I'll get there early, okay? Don't let everyone show up before me." Colette had sat in the bathroom with her phone to reply, the water running so Dwight wouldn't hear her typing. "Please come early. Please come really early." She hadn't known exactly what she was asking for. She just knew she needed her sister there before everyone else arrived, the way you need a flashlight before you walk into a dark room. Ingrid hadn't always understood the life Colette had built in this house. For years, she'd thought Colette was choosing it. They'd grown up in Richmond, the daughters of a woman who worked 2 jobs and still made Sunday dinner from scratch every week. Their mother had her own money, her own car, her own opinions, and she'd raised her girls to expect the same for themselves. Colette had, for a while. She graduated top of her graphic design program. She had clients before she even had a degree. Small businesses, a restaurant logo here, a band's album cover there, a nonprofit's annual report that she stayed up 3 nights in a row to finish, and then drove 40 minutes to deliver in person because she wanted to see their faces. She had a portfolio that her professors called commercially mature. She had an apartment in Carytown with good light and a second-hand desk where she worked until 2 in the morning because she wanted to, not because she had to. She met Dwight at a friend's birthday party. He was charming and steady in a way she hadn't expected to find attractive, but did. He was 12 years older than her. He had a house, a retirement account, a plan. He said things like, "You don't have to hustle so hard. I've got you." She thought he meant it as a gift. They married 14 months after they met. Colette was 25. The first time he criticized her work, really criticized it, not the gentle kind, was about 8 months after the wedding. A client had asked her to design a full brand identity package, and she'd stayed up late 3 nights running to finish it. Dwight came downstairs at 2 in the morning and stood in the kitchen doorway with an expression that wasn't quite anger but wasn't patience, either. "This is starting to feel like you're married to your laptop," he said. "Is that what you want?" She apologized. She finished the project, billed the client, and then, almost without deciding to, she turned down the next inquiry, just to give things some peace. That was the first project she declined. It wasn't the last. Within 2 years, she had stopped taking clients entirely. Dwight hadn't demanded it exactly. He'd said things like, "The house needs attention, and it's a lot of stress for such little money. And you're spread too thin, babe. I worry about you." And she'd listened, because she loved him, and because she was tired, and because it was easier to believe he was right. Then one afternoon, she opened the external hard drive where she'd kept 6 years of design work, logos, layouts, illustrations, wedding programs, album covers, everything, and found it wiped. Dwight said he'd thought it was the backup drive he'd been meaning to clear out, said he was sorry, bought her flowers. She never found out if it was an accident. After that, she didn't design anything for almost 2 years. The morning Dwight read her bank notification from the Easter table, Ingrid led Colette to the back bedroom and sat with her while the sounds of the house went on without them. Silverware, Norma's voice, a television someone had turned on to cut the silence. "Does it hurt?" Ingrid asked. "He didn't touch me." "I know. Does the rest of it hurt?" Colette sat on the edge of the guest bed. The comforter was stiff and smelled like the cedar blocks Norma stuffed in all her closets. "I started those freelance jobs because I had to," she said. I just needed something that was mine. I wasn't trying to go behind his back. I was just trying to—" She stopped. Ingrid waited. "I needed to know I could still do it." "You never stopped being able to do it," Ingrid said. Colette looked at her hands. There was still blue ink under the edge of her thumbnail from a color-matching project. She'd finished at 1 in the morning, after Dwight had gone to sleep. She'd been careful. She always worked late, when the house was quiet, when there was no one to ask what she was doing and why. "The account," Colette said. "I know how it looked." "It didn't look like anything wrong," Ingrid said. "It looked like a woman keeping a little bit of herself somewhere safe." Colette didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, "He took money from me once before. Not like this, just grocery money I'd saved by buying store brands instead of what he put on the list. He counted the change when I got back and took what was left over. Said I didn't need it for anything." Ingrid looked at her sister. Outside, they could hear Gavin saying something, and then Norma laughing at it. "Come on," Ingrid said, standing. "Let's go." "Where?" "Out. I'm not going to sit in this house and pretend the last hour didn't happen." They drove to a bakery 2 miles away that Colette used to go to in college. The place had changed ownership twice since then, but it still had the same black and white tile floor and the same glass case full of pastries that fogged up when the oven was running. Ingrid ordered 2 lattes and pointed at the chocolate croissants in the case. "2 of those," she said. "I shouldn't," Colette said. "I know. 2 of those." They sat by the window. The croissant was flaky and too sweet and exactly right. Colette took 1 bite and then stopped chewing for a moment, just holding it. "I haven't had one of these in a long time," she said. "How long?" Colette thought about it. "Dwight thinks pastries are frivolous, spending money on something that doesn't fill you up." She set it down on the napkin. "Maybe since before we got married, maybe longer." Ingrid looked at her. "You used to eat one every Sunday. You used to go to that place on Grove and sit there with your sketchbook and a croissant and just be completely happy." Colette picked it back up. She ate the rest of it slowly, looking out the window at the street, at a man walking a dog, at a child on a bike with training wheels and a bright green helmet, at the ordinary afternoon moving along without asking her permission. "Ingrid," she said finally, "I don't know who I am anymore." You're the same person, Ingrid said. He just made a lot of room for you to forget. They stayed for an hour. Colette didn't check her phone once. When Ingrid finally paid and they walked back to the car, the afternoon had gone golden with late sun, and Colette stood on the sidewalk for a moment and just breathed. By the time they got back, Gavin and Sharon had left. Norma was in the kitchen with the leftover dishes. Dwight was sitting in the living room with his arms crossed. He looked at Colette when she walked in and waited until Ingrid went upstairs before he spoke. I want you to close that account, he said, and I want you to stop taking these jobs. If you want to do graphic design, we can talk about setting up something official, something with our finances, not a shadow account you're hiding from me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I want a divorce, Dwight. He laughed. Not a real laugh, the kind that means that's absurd. You're being emotional. I've been thinking about it for a while, she said. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. He stopped laughing. Norma appeared in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel in her hand. She'd heard. She stood there looking between them. Colette, Norma said quietly, let's all calm down before anyone says anything they can't take back. I've already said it, Colette said. By the next morning, the house was full of people who hadn't been invited. Norma had called Gavin and Sharon, and 2 cousins and a woman named Wilma from the church, all of whom appeared in the living room by 9 o'clock, with the quiet urgency of people who'd been told there was a crisis to manage. Ingrid sat next to Colette on the love seat, with her arms folded and her face perfectly still. Gavin cleared his throat. Colette, what happened yesterday was a misunderstanding that got out of hand. Dwight can be, he paused. He can have a short fuse. We all know that. But he loves you and he provides for you, and I don't think ending a marriage over a bank account is the answer. Over a bank account, Colette said. That's not what I. You were sitting right there, Ingrid said. You watched him pick up her laptop. Did that look like a short fuse? Or did that look like someone who does this all the time? Gavin didn't answer. Norma leaned forward. Colette, I know my son isn't always easy, but you've built a life together. You have stability. You have this house. You're 36 years old. Starting over isn't what you think it is. You're right, Colette said. I know exactly what it is. She folded her hands in her lap. He deleted my entire portfolio, 6 years of work. Said it was an accident. He has never once asked about a design project I was working on, unless it was to tell me I was spending too much time on it. I have asked for money, for groceries, for gas, and he has counted what I brought back. She paused. None of you were in this house. None of you know what it's been like in here. The cousins exchanged a look. Wilma pressed her mouth into a thin line. Sharon, who had been sitting at the edge of the couch with her knees together, said nothing at all. But she was listening in a way the others weren't. If you leave, Norma said, you'll have nothing. You haven't worked in years. Who's going to hire you? Ingrid smiled. She's been working for months. That was the entire point of yesterday. Colette stood up. I need everyone to go home. Ingrid and I have calls to make. It took 2 minutes for the room to begin clearing, and a week for the paperwork to begin. During that week, Colette stayed in the house, and Dwight slept in the guest room. She packed what she could carry. Her clothes. The design files she'd backed up on cloud drives that Dwight had never thought to look for. The sketchbooks from before the marriage that she'd kept in a box under the bed. She found one drawing in that box she'd done the week before the wedding. A woman standing in a room full of light. At the time, she'd thought she was drawing the way her future would feel. She looked at it for a long time, then she packed it. Ingrid drove her to Richmond, to their mother's house, where Colette slept in her old bedroom and woke the first morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of her mother humming something in the kitchen that she'd been humming since they were children. She found a 1-bedroom apartment in 3 weeks. She spent the first 2 nights there sitting on the floor with her laptop and a cup of tea, rebuilding her portfolio from everything she'd saved in the cloud. She had more than she'd remembered. Client emails with their approvals, screenshots of live work, project files she'd thought were gone forever. 7 years of work, not gone, just hidden somewhere he couldn't reach. She applied for a designer position at a branding studio in Carytown. The hiring manager, Brennan, asked her to bring a portfolio to the interview. She showed up with 32 pages of work printed and laminated and a USB drive with the digital files, and she answered every question without apologizing for the gap in her resume. Brennan asked about the gap anyway. I was managing a household, she said. He looked at her. Did you design during that time? Toward the end, yes. I can tell. He turned another page. I can see exactly where you came back. The work changes here. It's more confident. She got the call 2 days later. They started her at $4,100 a month. The night before her first day, she called Ingrid. I'm scared, she said. Of what? What if I'm not as good as I think I am? What if the gap is too long and everyone can tell? Colette. Ingrid's voice was steady. You have been good for 20 years. Dwight not looking didn't mean there was nothing to see. On her first day, Colette brought a box of donuts for the studio. By 11 o'clock, 3 coworkers had stopped by her desk to talk. By 3 in the afternoon, she'd been asked to join a project team for a nonprofit brand rollout. By 5 o'clock, she was still at her desk not because she had to be, but because she didn't want to stop. She drove home in the blue hour between work and full dark. She sat in the parking lot of her apartment complex for a few minutes with the windows down. The air was warm and smelled like cut grass from the lot next door. This is mine, she thought. The car, the apartment, the job, the parking space with her number on it, all of it. Dwight showed up at the studio 6 weeks after she started. She didn't know he was there until Brennan knocked on her office door and said, There's a man in the lobby asking for you. Says he's your husband. I didn't let him pass the front desk. She found Dwight standing near the reception area with his coat on, looking at the design work hanging on the walls the way he'd always looked at her work. Like it was a foreign language he didn't see the point of learning. I thought we could talk, he said. We have lawyers for that now. Colette. He lowered his voice. Be reasonable. The house is a mess. I can't find anything. You had passwords on everything. I can't even log into the utilities account. Come home and we'll figure this out together. The utilities account password is the same as the Wi-Fi password, she said. The one you told me was too long to remember, so I memorized it for both of us. He looked at her. You look different. She thought about the croissant at the bakery. She thought about the drawing of a woman in a room full of light. She thought about the first morning at her apartment when she'd made coffee at 7 and drunk it. Standing at the kitchen window, without checking to see if she was in anyone's way. I have to get back to work, she said. What are you even making here? It can't be much. From behind her, Ingrid's voice came clear and unhurried. She'd driven up for lunch and was still in the lobby with a paper bag from the sandwich place down the street. She makes a lot more than $175, Ingrid said. You should go. Dwight looked at Ingrid, then at Colette. Then he walked out through the glass front doors and got into his car without looking back. Colette watched him drive away. She felt her shoulders drop in a way she hadn't noticed they'd been raised. Gavin texted her that night. Dad's been staying with us for 2 weeks. Sharon wants to call you. Sharon called the next morning. I want to say I'm sorry, she said with no introduction. I was at Easter dinner. I watched him take your laptop. I didn't say a word. She paused. I've been married to Gavin for 9 years and I know what it feels like when a whole room decides the easiest thing is to stay quiet. I chose the easy thing and I'm sorry. Colette sat at her kitchen counter with her coffee. Thank you for saying that. He's making Gavin's life hell, by the way. In case you were wondering. She was a little. She didn't say it, but she was. The divorce was finalized in October, 7 months after Easter. Colette and Ingrid drove to the courthouse on a Tuesday morning. Ingrid had taken the day off. She brought a thermos of coffee and 2 chocolate croissants from a bakery near her apartment, wrapped in a brown paper bag. Colette held the decree with both hands in the parking lot afterward. It was a single page of legal language and a judge's signature, and she read it 3 times even though it said the same thing each time. She looked up at Ingrid and laughed, not because it was funny, but because her body needed to do something with what she was feeling, and laughing was the closest thing she had. Now what? She said. Now we eat these before they get cold, Ingrid said, holding up the bag. They sat on a bench outside the courthouse in the October sun, and Colette ate her croissant in the warm air and felt, for the first time in a very long time, like a person who belonged entirely to herself. She went back to Gavin and Sharon's house for the December gathering, the big one, the one everyone still felt obligated to attend out of some old habit of keeping the peace. She drove herself there in her own car. She wore a coat she'd bought, with her 3rd paycheck, and earrings Ingrid had given her for her birthday. Dwight was there. He was standing near the fireplace looking like someone who'd lost a few things, and hadn't quite figured out which ones to grieve. His hair was longer than it used to be. He looked somehow like a smaller version of himself. When he saw her, he started to say something. She crossed the room and hugged Sharon first, then Gavin, then Norma, even Norma, because Norma was old and frightened and had done what frightened people do. Then she helped Sharon set the table and talked with the kids about school and ate a plate of food that was exactly what she wanted. She did not speak to Dwight. When she and Ingrid left, it was early evening and the sky over Richmond had gone the color of a bruise healing, purple bleeding into orange at the edges, something that had hurt becoming something new. Colette drove with the heat on and the window cracked because she liked the cold air on her face, and Ingrid had her feet up on the dash the way she'd done since they were teenagers riding in their mother's car. "You okay?" Ingrid asked. "Yeah," Colette said. She meant it. "Good." They drove without talking for a while. Colette thought about the bench outside the courthouse. She thought about the room full of light she'd drawn before the wedding. She thought about the nonprofit project she'd been asked to lead that week, a full identity system for a children's literacy organization. The kind of work that kept her at her desk until the light changed outside, and she forgot to notice the time passing. She also thought about something her coworker Aiden had done that morning. He worked at the desk diagonal from hers, and always remembered how people took their coffee. At 8 o'clock, he'd set a paper bag on the corner of her desk without saying anything. And when she opened it, there was a chocolate croissant from the place down the street. "Thought you might want one," he said. "You mentioned that bakery the other day." She'd thanked him, and he'd nodded and gone back to his screen, and she'd sat there for a moment with the warm bag in her hands, thinking that this was what it was supposed to feel like. Small, ordinary kindness, offered without expectation, with nowhere to land except exactly where it was. She let the thought rest there. The way you leave a door open without deciding yet whether to walk through it. Ingrid fell asleep against the window, somewhere past the second exit. Colette drove through the familiar streets alone with the radio low, the window cracked just enough to let the city in. She was 36 years old. She was, for the first time in a long time, exactly where she was supposed to be going.